Hey folks, I wanted to go ahead and create a video today to talk about post-finasteride syndrome. A lot of people have been asking me about this, and I wanted to go ahead and give my opinion of it. But before I do, let me quickly give an overview for what it is for people who are not familiar with it. So post-finasteride syndrome is the hypothetical notion that the side effects that we know exist with finasteride will not dissipate upon cessation of use, and even will get a lot worse once you stop using the drug right there. So I do not hold this idea very fondly, and a lot of people are critical of me for actually criticizing the idea of post-finasteride syndrome's existence. And just so that there's no confusion, let me just flat out state that I think post-finasteride syndrome is complete bullshit. I think it's a scaremongering tactic to dissuade people from using finasteride. And I think that the people who promote the idea, they can't even prove conclusively that finasteride is what caused them their problems. However, you know how misery likes to enjoy company. They don't want anybody else to have a good experience with finasteride. So not only do they try to discourage people from using finasteride, but what they'll do is that they'll go out and attack and criticize the people who have had a very positive experience with finasteride, like myself, because they hate the idea that somebody could actually benefit from this drug. And the fact of the matter is that out of the millions and millions of people who have had prescriptions filled for finasteride, very, very few people have had any adverse effects, and the side effects, which do go away after discontinuation, only affect about 2% of the population, and there is no scientific evidence whatsoever that post-finasteride syndrome is real. Now, what these people do who promote this idea that post-finasteride syndrome is a real thing is that they'll take advantage of the scientific illiteracy of people who are reading their post and reading their dogma, basically. And, that's okay to be scientifically illiterate. And I mean, not every one of us is a biochemist. However, it's important to realize that the quality of research is important, because you know how people like sometimes use that appeal to futility fallacy where they say that, oh, you can find science to back up just about any claim, any hypothesis. And, that's true. However, it's important to be able to distinguish between good research versus bad research. And the scientific research that people who promote the idea of post-finasteride syndrome are relying on is very, very bad research, because in every example I've seen, it's rooted either in very weak observational studies or it's rooted in just mechanistic data. So with the mechanistic data, and if you go to the, I'm not even going to encourage you to go there. Stay the fuck away from the Propecia help forums or any kind of finasteride support group. You don't want to go there. It's going to give you a terrible notion about the drug, and you're just going to give yourself side effects via a nocebo effect, where you're so convinced that something is bad that your brain will convince you that it's bad. So anyways, getting back on subject, what they'll often do is that they'll say, oh, look, headline, breaking news. There's this new study that shows that finasteride, yada, 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 it affects the neurological or the enzymatic pathway of corticosteroids, which can cause irreversible problems and blah, blah, blah. And that's just a strict mechanistic data that they're relying on right there. And the problem with mechanism is that mechanism is very, very complicated. I mean, we can look at some mechanistic data and we can establish a hypothesis from it, but there's a very good chance that the mechanism that we're looking at only describes a fraction of what's a very small fraction of what's actually going on in the body. So much more valuable than mechanistic data is actual outcome data. So outcome data is like the data that we see, that's collected from people who have actually been been involved in clinical trials and cross-sectional studies, and there's control groups, and we can say conclusively that this drug has a certain effect because a certain percentage of the people who have been in the trials actually experienced an effect from the drug, and the control group is large enough that we can rule out the margin of error, and we can say for sure that it isn't just an accident or a coincidence. But you won't see any data like that supporting the idea that post-finasteride syndrome exists. So instead they just go ahead and turn to mechanism, and that's just not good enough evidence. I mean, the fact is that there's a large number of drugs that are FDA approved where we don't even know how they work at all. I mean, that goes for certain statins, certain antidepressants, and even minoxidil, which is an FDA-approved drug. We can't say for sure we know what the mechanism is, but it doesn't fucking matter, because the fact of the matter is that in outcome trial and outcome data, there's no evidence that it has any harmful, long-lasting effects. And finasteride is a drug that's been around since It's been approved since 1992, but, you know, the clinical trials probably started like way back in the 80s or so. And during all this time, we haven't even started to hear anything about post-finasteride syndrome until, like, you know, the age, well into the age of the internet. I mean, the internet's been around since the 90s, but I don't think I heard anything about post-finasteride syndrome until, like, the late 2000s at the very earliest. And coincidentally enough, these claims started occurring at around the same time all these advertisements from lawyers started popping up where they say, let us help you sue Merck. So I think a lot of these people are just money hungry. They are seeking damages by claiming that their problems are caused by finasteride when they really have no evidence of that. And the thing is that, like, when you're in the court of law, or, you know, like even like in like just like a litigation court, you may be before a jury who's also scientifically illiterate, and they'll like see like the plaintiff, and they'll feel very sympathetic for them, and they won't be able to make the connection that finasteride actually doesn't cause these side effects because they may just be as ignorant as the general public. So a lot of times, like, these lawsuits actually succeed, which is pretty unfortunate. But, you know, like Merck, they make enough money that they can actually still sell the drug and make profit, despite some of the lawsuits that are being made against them. But the fact of the matter is that there's no good evidence that post-finasteride syndrome exists. And, you know, there's also, like, you know, some observational studies that they'll link, and they'll say that, like, this person or these group of people, what happened is that they actually got side effects on finasteride while they were on finasteride. However, an observational study is not a good form of evidence because all it shows is that they got side effects while on finasteride. I mean, they might as well just say that brushing their teeth caused these side effects, because we cannot conclusively determine for sure that finasteride is what actually caused these side effects, because we don't have any like information or data about these people's lifestyle or changes in behavior, which could have also contributed to these side effects. And that brings up an important point I want to bring up, is that you'll notice that these people from like the Propecia Help forums, they are some of the most pathetic life forms you can ever imagine. We're talking about people who are either severely underweight, severely overweight. They look like hypogonadal. They probably had endocrinological problems even before they started taking finasteride. And it's possible finasteride made things a little bit worse. And there's a lot of them who look like they may be diabetic or pre-diabetic. And as we all know, diabetes can actually cause erectile dysfunction because it causes nerve damage. And a lot of them are just extremely mentally deranged. I think that they have severe depression, which again could have also been exacerbated by finasteride. And if you have mental health problems, then it's going to be very easy for you to assume that finasteride is something that caused it. But chances are they had problems before they started taking finasteride. And if you look at, like, you know, the general population, like, you know, like people who are fit, healthy, don't have any like pre-existing health problems when they're on finasteride, they don't really get any issues with it. I mean, I haven't seen any examples of like fit and healthy people who have gotten long-lasting side effects from finasteride. And even if I did, it wouldn't matter, because anecdotes aren't evidence, and anecdotes are all these people ever rely on, and I don't trust them. And it's really kind of grating for me, because I feel that, you know, even if they did have a bad experience from finasteride, that doesn't give them the right to take away all the positives that I've experienced and everyone else has experienced from this drug. Finasteride is a drug that I do not regret using. I regret absolutely nothing about it. In fact, I can say that, like, you know, just going back on my own life history, I used to have a lot of problems. I used to experiment with drugs in the mid to late 90s. I had a very, very poor diet where I was just eating like Twinkies and Mountain Dew in the early 2000s. And, you know, I wasted a lot of my 20s doing extremely unproductive things where, you know, like, other than like university studies, I would like just play World of Warcraft all day. And, you know, I just spend way too much time just indoors because of my social awkwardness and depression. And it really hurt my health. And as a result, I eventually decided to change my lifestyle. I lost a lot of weight. I got into shape. I started lifting weights, and I put on a lot of muscle. I did things to improve just, you know, my general health and hygiene. And I can safely say that nothing I have done as far as improving my confidence goes even compares to the confidence boost I got from saving my hair. And that came mostly from my use of finasteride. And if I had listened to the Propecia Help idiots back in the day, then I know that I would be completely bald today. My confidence would be shot. And with low confidence, I would not be inspired to do the other things I've done to improve my health as well. It would have had a chain effect, and I know that my life would be dramatically worse as a result of this. So one of the reasons why I decided to start creating these videos was to share my positive experience. And, I know not everybody's going to have that positive experience, but nobody has the right to silence others just because they didn't have a good experience. Like, I'm sorry finasteride didn't work well for you. And, you're welcome to express your viewpoint about the subject and everything. You can go ahead and have your own platform where you talk about how horrible finasteride is. But if you're going to promote bullshit, then prepare to be called out on it. And don't try to silence others or criticize others for just sharing their own positive experience with the drug. I mean, it just shows spitefulness, it shows jealousy, and it really is just comes across as like pitiful and desperate. So, like I said, I regret nothing, and I'm happy to promote this drug. It's taking it was one of the best decisions I have ever made in my life, maybe even the best decision. I think it really saved my life. I feel that, like, if my depression had gotten any worse, like in the early 2000s, I may have even driven me to suicide. So, I mean, nothing, people talk about, like, how finasteride can cause depression. Even if that's true, losing your hair is about the most depressing thing that can possibly happen. So, I'm starting to ramble on a little bit, but I just want to go ahead and give my opinion. So to sum it all up, the data that people are relying on to speak out in favor of the existence of post-finasteride syndrome is just weak observational studies and mechanistic data, which cannot be relied on. And that's the best they have, and they are taking advantage of people's scientific illiteracy to convince them that finasteride is causing these problems, when in reality they don't have any strong evidence to support those claims. So anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about regarding this subject, and I will be back later this week with some more content, and hopefully I won't have to tackle this stupid subject ever again, because I hate even talking about it, because it's just such a bullshit subject, and it's caused a lot of people to halt using finasteride when they really should take it, because even though there are other things that work, finasteride really is the best thing we have, because it's so convenient and it works extremely well in the majority of people who take it, and it's even good as a standalone treatment, which you can't say for something like minoxidil. So anyways, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will be back soon. Take care.